Hey all, here are OS Reviews. In this video, we're taking a look at something kind of interesting. It's called the Jeazans A10 Pro Tablet. And I'm trying to hold back from calling this something like a Wish.com or Temu version of a Google Pixel tablet, but that's the first thought that popped into my mind when I saw this thing. It has a 2-in-1 design with a speaker charging dock that can also activate a photo frame mode when the tablet is popped in, and when you remove it, of course, you can use it as a conventional tablet. So the concept here of a 2-in-1, again, docking station actually is not bad. It's one that I actually wish more manufacturers would consider. However, what kind of lets this model down, at least here on paper, is the processing package and resolution of the tablet part here is definitely going to be more budget oriented, considering that this thing sells for around $85. I've actually seen it go on sale, discounted to around $70 during certain promotions when you are shopping around. So it's obviously just a fraction of the cost of a real Google Pixel tablet. You can pick up 4 or 5 of these for the cost of one. However, you are also talking about much lower end, again, specs. It's using a octa-core A523 processor from Allwinner, and there's no getting around it. This is definitely an entry-level processor. It came out in Q3 of 2023, so it's not the newest on the market either. It's going to feel slower compared to even chipsets like the MediaTek Helio G99 that's also popular in entry-level phones and tablets. Not going to be a powerhouse, unfortunately, and the screen resolution is also 720p or HD res instead of being full HD, so if you're using it as a photo frame, it might not be the sharpest. In addition, the RAM on this model is a little bit limited. Now, it touts quote-unquote 14 gigabytes of RAM, but that's actually only 3 gigs of built-in physical RAM, and the rest is virtual RAM expansion. It's emulated using software and partially works, except it's not as effective as the real thing. So like I said, the tablet section is unfortunately where they cut a lot more corners, from the screen resolution being lower, to a slower processor, to less RAM. It's definitely giving high ambitions on a shoestring budget. But then again, looking at that price point, it's actually not too unexpected, I would say. I just wish that they would have used something a little bit faster, maybe at least a Helio G99, so it feels a bit more speedy, maybe at least a full HD res screen on a 10-inch panel would be nice to find. Even if they have to increase the price by a little bit more, I think it could have been a little bit more useful for most folks. So just a bit of a wasted opportunity, in my opinion, of having a design which is pretty cool. Anyways, it is running on Android 14, has a 5000 milliamp hour capacity battery, and one feature that is a little interesting on this dock is it does have a LED lighting function as well that can act as kind of a mood lamp, which is actually not found even on the real Google version. The stereo loudspeaker in the dock, of course, will be much louder compared to the built-in speaker of most tablets. Some final specs here, we have 64 gigs of built-in storage that can be expanded, thankfully, using a micro SD card slot. It supports Widevine L1 for streaming Netflix up to full HD res, but the irony here is the native resolution of the screen is only 720p, so having the certification actually maybe doesn't matter all that much in terms of the viewing experience, again, ironically enough. There's a 8 megapixel camera on the rear, again with a kind of LED light ring that is trying to be a bit more playful with the design. Kind of cool if only the guts were more performant. Perhaps they'll come out with a more deluxe or pro version down the line that will hopefully improve on the specs of the tablet side of things, even though this one already has Pro as part of its name. So right on top, we have a quick info guide that tells us how to activate the docking functionality, where it can enter into a cloud photo frame display mode. In fact, you can even play back some white noise nature sounds when it's docked. And then right on top here, we have the tablet section we'll take a closer look at in a moment. Down below here, you'll find a power adapter. It's using standard USB Type-C, which is good for the speaker dock, which again, very similar to the Google Pixel tablet, housing stereo speakers here on the right with left and right channels, and a passive radiator for added bass in the middle, that one here for power, and the entire ring on the back here actually has a RGB LED strip. Soft touch rubber finish also prevents it from sliding around on a surface, and then the tablet just docks into place using these magnetic pogo contacts. And that being said, the inside portion here is just rigid plastic, so if they had a bit more of that soft touch finish, it might make it a little bit more resistant to scratching when you are docking it. And also the back here is crafted out of fabric, again similar to the Google tablet where they clearly were inspired by. Plugging the speaker dock into power, we'll see a boot up animation there on the LEDs. And also hear the sound as it starts to initiate. Tablet section. This is where things aren't quite as impressive. In fact, we have seen some sub-$100 budget Android tablets recently that have a better build quality. This thing is actually entirely crafted out of plastic, so it definitely feels a little bit more cheap as you're handling it compared to some of those other options that we've checked out, have a metal back, for example, and also have more built-in physical RAM as well as a faster processor. So clearly it's about compromises. For this really entry-level price point, you can either find one with more performance and better build, or in this case, they allocated the resources away from the tablet and into the speaker dock instead. So it's all about what you're using this thing for. If you are considering it as an alternative to maybe a digital photo frame that you can also pick up and detach, just for watching some quick YouTube videos with, I think it should be fine. However, if you're using it for more intensive applications, including even light gaming, as well as perhaps web browsing, involving slightly more multitasking, that's where having a faster processor, more RAM, is instead going to give you the better experience. So turning on the docking station, when you pop it on, you can see the charging here will automatically start. And you also see it flash blue here to indicate that it's successfully paired with the tablet. Interestingly enough, even though it's using those magnetic contact points on the back, it's mostly for charging, because when it comes to audio, it's still being treated as a Bluetooth device, which is why when you are connecting it to the dock, you need to have Bluetooth turn on. As you can see here, right now it's indicating the smart tablet dock is paired. And we jump into system settings, you're able to control, once docked, if it's going to activate the photo frame functionality. There's a separate section here in the UI, with other options including the white noise sounds that can begin playing, and the lighting effects can be turned on or off if you find it to be too distracting. Now in terms of the white noise sounds, you can find effects here including an ocean wave. So if we click on that, it's also going to play this visualizer. Other sounds here include one for engine effects. So we can see it is a RGB light that tries to change to different colors depending on the sound effects that you're engaging with. Another one here being running water. So it's all rather peaceful, helping you just calm down a little bit, maybe take a nap, fall asleep a little bit more easily. Crackling fire. This is forest sounds. Thunderstorm. Summer night. You can hear some of the crickets there in the background. And last but not least, journey. So this is a maybe serene train journey with the on-screen visualizer there that continues to loop. So not a bad idea. Those are all the current sound effects. Now coming back to the photo frame part, and it behaves very similar to a Framio cloud photo frame or a Wi-Fi photo frame. You're able to send images over from a smartphone app that we'll see also in a moment. It will randomly cycle through some of the images that I've sent over here, and we can engage with here on the frame or cycle back and forth just by using our fingers. It's actually not a bad looking screen. At least it is an IPS LCD screen, so viewing angles don't seem to be that problematic. It's just the resolution, because it isn't full HD, it's just 720p, it's not going to be quite as pin sharp if you are pixel peeping. But if you're looking at it from slightly further away, I guess it still seems to be mostly fine. And if you tap on the gallery section here, this will show all the images that I've sent over wirelessly here to the frame. Interestingly, looks like there's also some kind of advert video, promotional video built into the system storage. You can obviously delete this, but just goes through some of the design aspects, highlighting some of those RGB lighting patterns in this clip. So anyways, taking a closer look at the companion app for the cloud photo frame part, it's called AI More. And from here, you're able to connect to your frame, searching for nearby devices, and we have found the cloud frame here that's currently online. We can also remote control the brightness of the screen, as well as change the volume output from the speaker dock as well, and setting up some controls for when the tablet should go to sleep versus waking up for the display if you want it to be turned off at night, for example. The Home tab of the app allows you to see images stored in your phone's memory or on your Google Photos account, and you're able to then click on specific images you want to send over. For example, maybe I like this one, and I can tap on the send icon, it's now been transferred over for you to view back. So actually the speed is relatively quick, surprisingly, between the companion app and the frame, only taking a split second for your images to be sent over. That being said, one limitation is at a single time, the number of photos that you can send are limited to under 9. And if you want to send more than 9 images at a time, you have to actually activate a subscription tier that costs additional money, which I think is a little bit of a shame. Kind of like on Amazon's Fire tablets, because the cost of the hardware is so low, they have to make up the money elsewhere using ads, or in this case, unlocking more features using software. But I think in most cases, 9 images shouldn't be that bad unless you want to send hundreds of photos over at a time. And you can also send shorter video clips as well. So we've actually received the file here. If we go ahead and click on that file, we can see that the video clip starts to play back here after a couple of seconds as well. So in terms of functionality, it does seem to indeed work, and it can act as just a kind of photo frame there, cycling through images in the background. And what we see here is just their first-party Cloud Photo Frame app. If you don't like this particular one, you can obviously start up something like Google Photos instead and play a slideshow of your images stored in your Google Photos account as another alternative, although maybe that takes an extra step as compared to launching automatically when the tablet is docked, which is one benefit of this native app. Now, other aspects of the tablet, including the gesture navigation, I think is relatively clean-ish to a stock version of Android. We have access to the Google Play Store, of course, for downloading more apps and content, plus all the Google services can be found here as well. When it comes to navigating around the UI, like we said before, because the processor in here is definitely very entry level by 2025 standards, you will find some moments of hesitation and some hiccups are to be expected. So you do have to be a little bit more patient and recalibrate your expectations if you're coming from a more powerful device. That being said, it's still usable enough, I would say, for handling the basics. Now, if we jump into the advanced system settings here just for one more look, I do wish they would have added in maybe an extra power saving mode though for the battery, maybe charge it up to something like 80% when docked, instead of continuously charging to maintain the battery health. But at least it is relatively easy to navigate around. We can swipe down to access the color enhance mode, kind of converting into more of an HDR, contrasty look, as well as change the brightness, contrast, saturation properties yourself, in addition to activating a black and white mode. So if you're doing things like reading documents, for example, this might feel a little bit closer to something like e-ink, although obviously it's still an LCD screen with a backlight, which, speaking of, there's also a reading mode, which will turn off the blue light filter to make it slightly more comfortable on your eyes. The screen here becomes slightly more yellowish in color temperature, although that can also be adjusted yourself down below here as well. So actually not bad in terms of number of settings that you're able to play with for such a basic tablet. Another custom addition here is called the AI Halo, which is really that glowing ring at the back of the tablet that you can turn on and off. So you can use it as a notification light when you are charging, react as a visualizer, or when you're getting new notifications, it can flash even when it's face down or the tablet screen isn't on. So it's this little wheel here at the back. So in fact, if we detach it and then pop it back into the dock, you can see it glow there for a couple of seconds before going to sleep. So it's another instance of the glowing RGBs, similar to the base, that you can turn on or turn off. So again, the irony here is they've clearly put a little bit more attention to detail compared to most other budget tablets when it comes to customizing the hardware, which is why it is a little bit of a shame that they couldn't have packed a little bit more powerful internals for the guts of the tablet itself, mainly the processor and RAM, and I think they could have made it an even more compelling package. Now, under About Tablet, you can also see it's saying it's running on Aumi AI OS, but really it's just regular Android with their custom launcher on top more than anything else, although we can also swipe down here to access again some of the specs that we saw there from earlier, currently running on Android 14. Now, like on most budget tablets and phones, it's unlikely to receive an Android 15 update, for example, although security patches will still be provided sporadically. It's definitely an area where longer term support would be nice to find, but it is kind of the norm in this price range. Now, that being said, under this tab, you can also check to see if there are any updates available, as well as activate the virtual RAM expansion that will require you to reboot the tablet to initialize it. Set up also a background switch so it can turn on and off at certain times in the day, maybe if you're not using it at night, and then automatically turn itself on in the morning to consume less power drain overnight. Now, something that I am noticing here is even when you are docking it and using it in the photo frame mode, it does get a little bit warmer here on the back region of the tablet when you first pick it up. Now, it's not like it's scorching or anything, but again, it would be nice to have maybe a more eco mode for the battery when it's docked to increase the battery health, but it is what it is. Also, when detached, it's relatively light, but again, the entire frame is crafted out of plastic. At the bottom, though, you will find built-in stereo speakers on the tablet itself. We'll play back a demo later compared to the quality of the dock itself and see how that stacks up. Along with on the left-hand edge, you'll find access to the Type-C port for charging, micro SD card slot to expand the built-in memory, which is nice to find, power key and volume rocker, although there is no biometric fingerprint scanner on this particular hardware, kind of par for the course at this price range though, and then pretty much nothing else. There is no 3.5mm headphone jack on the chassis of this particular tablet. Diving into some of these other apps, there is a basic sound recorder or voice recorder here. For some reason, some of the text is still in Chinese, so translation is still a little bit rough. Hopefully they continue patching it with more firmware updates. The overall quality of the built-in microphone doesn't seem to be all that bad. So tapping on play here as an example, built-in microphone doesn't seem to be all that bad. And you can tell that by default, it's still coming out from the speaker dock because it is wireless Bluetooth, so it remains connected for sound even when it's detached. Surprisingly clean, actually, so if you are using it for some speakerphone calls, it seems to be all right. Another interesting feature here is going to be a Miracast receiver. So this is also borrowing a concept from the Pixel tablet, although it's using Miracast instead of Chromecast, so it's a slightly different standard, but still it can act as a wireless display. So if you activate wireless screen sharing from a smartphone, like on Android or even iPhone, you can download a third-party app. You can then remotely share the screen onto the tablet here. Just make sure your devices are connected to the same Wi-Fi network. Tapping on search, we found the A10 Pro Tablet and then begin the mirroring. Moment or two here, we should then see the image appear on screen. So you can use this if you want to share maybe a video, quick photo, presentation, web page to someone else. Maybe this is in the kitchen or bedroom. This might be helpful. We can of course flip the orientation around on our phone and also see the image expand into a full screen view like this. You can be streaming back a YouTube video, playing back a game, such as Alto's Odyssey here as an example, and you're able to see it on maybe a slightly larger screen of the tablet here. Actually not too bad. Maybe there's a slight moment of hesitation here and there because it's a wireless connectivity, so there is some latency that's going to be affected by your internet bandwidth and speed, but all in all, not that bad, and definitely still a usable experience. Now moving into a video playback demo, starting with the speaker quality of the tablet part first. Now activating the speaker dock by turning on Bluetooth. So takeaway is the speaker quality here on the dock is definitely a significant improvement versus what's built into the thinner tablet frame, although this one here can still be okay if you're using it for a quick YouTube clip. Gets the job done in a pinch, but the drivers here are definitely going to be louder, fuller sounding with a touch more bass versus what's built in by default. Also for video streaming, you can tell it's not bad for things like YouTube and Netflix. It can still play back videos without too much delay at the very least. Reception quality via Wi-Fi seems to be doing all right, so you don't have to be waiting too long for the videos to start playing back, and buffering time isn't going to be that big of an issue here. That being said, if you're doing a lot of multitasking, again, running maybe two apps at the same time, you definitely will have to wait a little bit lower. It's going to get a bit more choppy due to the more limited RAM. This also isn't helped by the fact that it doesn't have a 90 Hz or faster refresh rate screen. It still is a standard 60 Hz panel, so if you're swiping super fast, it can seem a little bit more jittery, but again, these are compromises made to hit the lower price point. Similarly, when it comes to web browsing, you have to wait for maybe just a split second longer for more complex pages to load, but after they do, it still seems to be a mostly usable experience. We can activate pinch to zoom. Again, maybe some moments of hesitation or delay, but generally speaking, it still seems to be usable. We can also open up another article link here, and this is a fairly complex page. Also jump into the camera app here for a quick look. You can tell there is, again, just a split-second delay as we jump into some of these programs. It's a pretty simple UI. We're able to snap images. There's also support for an OK gesture for it to take images if you are capturing selfies, for example. You are able to find more of a pro mode for more manual controls like ISO and white balance. So it's definitely not the best camera in the world, but in tablets in general, at least it does have autofocus. And generally speaking, if you're using it for some quick document scanning, just preserving some text information for reading back, at least it still seems to do all right. Now, one feature I do like though is there is a built-in LED flash mode. It's basically activating that ring, except instead of the RGB lighting, it's turned on only the white light to act as a torch or flashlight, illuminating objects a little bit better in a darker environment. Similarly, because of the plastic chassis, it is again rather light for a 10-inch tablet, making it still a little bit more comfortable if you are holding it like this for things like reading back comics, webtoons, things like that. It seems to do an okay job as well, as you can tell here. But again, due to the limited RAM, even if you have virtual expansion turned on, I would still recommend keeping just 1 or 2 programs in the background running for the best experience. Otherwise, it's going to feel significantly more sluggish and choppy. So just keep that in mind. But if you're mainly performing just 1 or 2 tasks at once, it still seems to be doing all right. Granted, if you are a competitive gamer, I definitely would not recommend this particular model just because of the tablet's very limited CPU, GPU, and RAM. It's just not going to handle more demanding games all that well. Titles like Asphalt, PUBG, for example, it's just going to be a lot more choppy, waiting significantly longer for them to load. Not to mention the older architecture of the processor here, meaning that thermals, again, getting a little bit warmer even just doing regular navigation. So it's just going to throttle a little bit more if you're pressing it really heavy and things like games. That being said, more casual titles that are kind of tap and go style like Crossy Road, puzzle type games are all examples of what I would limit this thing to. Primarily, I would say using it for entertainment with that photo frame mode, watching back some videos with the better speaker dock are the main use cases here. So that is more or less it as far as our hands-on closer look at this very interesting A10 Pro tablet, this 2-in-1 design. I think it is, again, a little bit of a shame because the concept is actually not bad. In fact, the speaker quality is better than I expected. The interesting thing here is the hardware and some of the software additions have definitely been customized with more attention to detail than what we usually expect in a sub $100 tablet, making it a little bit more interesting and exciting to take a closer look at. However, I just think it's, again, a little bit unfortunate they couldn't use a faster, newer processor, as well as just upgrading the RAM, even to something like 4 gigabytes at minimum, I think would make it run more smoothly here in 2025. That being said, if you understand its limitations, primarily want to use it in that photo display mode, simple tasks, you're a little bit more patient, then at least it offers an interesting choice. Hopefully in Generation 2, Revision 2, they can come out with faster internals. I think that would offer a superior experience overall. But definitely interesting from a new brand that we haven't seen previously. You can check out more details if you're interested in something like this in the links down below, or the Google Pixel tablet, of course. But for now, that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That's been the 2-in-1 docking tablet, the A10 Pro.